Hi friends. Welcome to Dentistry Love channel. Mixed dentition. Mixed dentition. This phase involves the presence of both deciduous and permanent teeth in oral cavity. The mixed dentition period can be divided into three phases. First transitional period, intertransitional period and second transitional period. First transitional period, emergence of the first permanent molars and the exchange of the deciduous incisors with the permanent incisors. Exchange of incisors. During first transitional period, the deciduous incisors are replaced by the permanent incisors. Mandibular central incisors are usually the first to erupt. Permanent incisors are considerably larger than the deciduous teeth they replace. This difference between the amount of space needed for the accommodation of the incisors and the amount of space available for this is called incisal liability. It is 7 mm in maxilla and 5 mm in mandible. Incisal liability is overcome by following factors: utilization of physiologic spaces seen in primary dentition. The physiologic or developmental spaces that exist in the primary dentition are utilized to the permanent incisors in normal alignment. Other factor is increase in intercanine width. An increase in intercanine width of both maxillary as well as mandibular arches allows the much larger permanent incisors to be accommodated in the arch previously occupied by the deciduous incisors. Change in incisor inclination. One of the differences between deciduous and permanent incisors is their inclination. The primary incisors are more upright than the permanent incisors. Since the permanent incisors erupt more labially inclined, they tend to increase the dental arch perimeter. This is another factor that helps in accommodating the larger permanent incisors. It involves establishment and attainment of occlusion of first permanent molars and occlusion of first permanent molar when deciduous molars are in flush terminal plane relation, mesial step terminal plane relation and distal step terminal plane relation. Flush terminal plane occlusion. The deciduous molar relation determines the permanent molar relation as the later erupts into occlusion. The shift in lower molar from the initial relation to final occlusion can occur in two ways. They are designated as the early and the late mesial shift. Early mesial shift, the forward movement of the first permanent molar utilizing the primate space, spacing seen mesial to maxillary canine and distal to mandibular canine, is termed as the early mesial shift. Late mesial shift, when the deciduous second molars exfoliate the permanent first molars, drift mesially utilizing the leeway space. This occurs in the late mixed dentition period and is called late mesial shift. If primate space lacks, it becomes class 3 occlusion. If it's adequate, it becomes class I occlusion. Mesial step terminal plane occlusion. In this type of relationship, the distal surface of the lower second deciduous molar is more mesial than that of the upper. Thus the permanent molars erupt directly into angles class I occlusion. Forward growth of mandible. If it is minimal, it becomes class 1 occlusion. If it is constant, it becomes class 3 occlusion. Distal step terminal plane occlusion. This is characterized by the distal surface of the lower second deciduous molar being more distal to that of the upper. Thus the erupting permanent molars may be in angles class 2 occlusion. Forward growth of mandible. If it is extensive, it becomes class 1 occlusion. If it is constant, it becomes class 2 occlusion. Here's the pic for your reference about the three terminal planes of occlusion. Intertransitional period. This is a relatively quiet phase and no active tooth eruption is seen. Between the permanent incisors and the first permanent molars are the deciduous molars and canines. This phase during the mixed dentition period is relatively stable and no change occurs. The second transitional period, it is characterized by the replacement and alignment of the deciduous molars and canines by the premolars and permanent cuspids respectively. The features of second transitional period are leeway space of gnats. The combined mesiodistal width of the permanent canines and premolars is usually less than that of the deciduous canines and molars. The surplus space is called leeway space of gnats. It is 1.8 mm in maxilla, 0.9 mm on each side. 3.4 mm in mandible, 1.7 mm on each side. Ugly duckling stage, Broadbent phenomenon. It is a transient or self-correcting malocclusion seen in the maxillary incisor region between 8 to 9 years of age, seen during the eruption of the permanent canines. As the developing permanent canines erupt, they displace the roots of the lateral incisors mesially. Thank you friends. Please do subscribe for more videos.